Today, we're taking a look at the self-proclaimed immovable force of Bravely Default 2, the Bastion. The Bastion specializes in protecting their party from both physical and magical attacks with impenetrable walls, while also providing some decent damage options with defense increasing effects. The Bastion also prides itself on having a strong stat spread, being able to fall back on providing direct healing or pure face tanking when the need arises. Now let's slide over to the Bastion's specialties, starting with Default Guard. When the Bastion is attacked while under the default stance, they will expend 15 of their own MP to power up their default by 40%. This boost will only activate when manually using default, so no passive or automatic defaults will trigger Default Guard. This passive is pretty helpful when you're trying to gain some extra BP, as it just ensures that the Bastion will have a harder time dying while gaining resources, and it isn't like you have to pay 15 MP anytime you want to default, just when you're hit. A simple yet valuable specialty. Next, we have Fortitude. When the Bastion is attacked while under the default stance, they will gain 1 BP at the cost of 15 MP being spent. If this sounds like Default Guard, then you'd be correct. Essentially, if a Bastion defaults and they're attacked, they will spend 15 MP to decrease the incoming damage, and then spend another 15 MP to gain 1 extra BP. Note that Default Guard's MP cut will always apply first, so be sure to have enough mana to also trigger Fortitude as much as possible. Similar to Default Guard, Fortitude cannot be triggered by passive defaults. Already, the Bastion earns a lot just from simply defaulting and being attacked. But 30 MP can start to add up fast, so do be sure to keep an eye on your Bastion's MP if necessary. The Bastion's special move is Invincible. This is a powerful, light-based magical attack that hits all foes that also creates a barrier on all party members that will fully block one physical or magical attack. This barrier cannot be combined with the Bastion's Rampart or Velation skills, but we'll get to that later. The bonus effect of Invincible is a 20% increase to the party's speed. The cost for getting this special move is also slightly different from the others, as instead of needing to use 13 Bastion abilities, you actually need to default 13 times. Manual defaults, no automatic defaults. Now let's move on to the Bastion's combat abilities, starting with Bulwark and Phalanx. Both of these actions are similar to each other, as they both dish out a weak physical attack onto a single target and then increase the Bastion's defense by 15%, with Bulwark increasing your physical defense and Phalanx increasing your magical defense. If the Bastion is your main tank, use these actions to beef up their defenses, as this is an easy way to get some chip damage in on an enemy while also increasing your own chances of survival. Next is Rampart and Velation. Rampart expends 30% of the Bastion's HP to apply a buff to each party member. This buff is a wall that will completely protect its holder from one physical attack, and then fall off. Velation gives a similar buff, but expends 25% of the user's HP and protects against magic attacks. These two actions cannot be stacked with each other, or the Bastion's special move Invincible. They will overwrite each other instead. Use these abilities to protect your team as often as possible, as not only is the HP cut these abilities have super easy to mitigate, but they essentially make your team untouchable unless the enemy attacks the same target multiple times in a single action. Next is Light of Justice and Holy Light. These two abilities are the Bastion's main damage actions, both being light-based physical attacks that deal a respectable amount of damage. When your defenses are high and you have MP and BP to spare, don't be afraid to chuck some of these out on your enemies once in a while. Next up is Wall. This ability simply raises the Bastion's physical and magical defense by 25%, being their primary means of beefing up their bulk to take hits for themselves and the team. Do keep in mind that you can spam Wall to raise your defenses as high as it'll go. Next is Blindsider. If a target is inflicted with the Blind status ailment, Blindsider will do 6 times the damage of a conventional attack to them. Because the Bastion themselves don't have a natural means of inflicting blind, they'll need some help setting this up. But this does indeed pack a punch, so be sure to make use of this ability when the opportunity presents itself. Next up is Double Default. Using this action will put a buff on the Bastion that will increase the amount of BP they gain from manually defaulting from 1 to 2 BP. This is another simple way for the Bastion to easily gain and hoard BP without issue, but I feel I must reiterate that like every other BP-based action we've seen so far from the Bastion, Double Default will not activate from passive or automatic defaults, just manual ones. Next is Sanctuary. This ability will make everyone in combat unable to change their current HP, MP, or BP until the user's next turn comes around. This normally wouldn't really do all that much, but there are two niches that I enjoy using with this skill. The first is baiting out an enemy's big attack. If they're stocked up on BP, they'll still try to take you down, and you can use this information to see what they might do when their turn comes around again. Knowledge is half the battle. But the second main use of Sanctuary is to set up or cleanse ailments along with buffs and debuffs. If you've seen any of my BD2 videos, then you know how valuable these things can be. So take this time where no HP, MP, or BP can change to apply them while the enemy can't stop you. And last up for combat abilities is Corporal Punishment. This is an extremely powerful physical attack that scales to the Bastion's physical defense alongside their attack power, making their extra bulk work towards increasing their strength even more. This ability has the chance to do a ton of damage, but remember that you can't just rely on physical defense for damage, so you have to blend both your attack and defenses if you want to make this do some serious damage. Now on to passive abilities, starting with Auto Guard. This passive will slow down the user's ability to take turns, but it will let them automatically adopt the default stance when it isn't their turn. This can let weaker characters who don't necessarily need a lot of turns to be helpful survive in between actions. But I feel it is important to note that for the Bastion specifically, none of their actions will be triggered off of Auto Guard's default, so this is more helpful on other jobs to ensure that they survive to the next turn. Next is Critical Flow. When the user lands a critical hit on an attack, they may gain 1 BP from it. This, despite it being random, isn't affected by the luck stat, so have fun with the extra BP you might or might not get. Critical Flow is super valuable if you're a job that is getting crits often and acting frequently, as your chances of activating this passive do go up drastically, and it will let you act even more often if you can somehow get the trigger to activate. Next up is BP Limit Up. With this passive equipped, its user will have their max BP count raised from +3 to +4 BP, letting them stock up more actions and make more use of BP eating abilities without as much fear of dropping into the negative. Do note that this doesn't change how many actions you can take per turn, just the amount of BP you can stock up. And last up for passive abilities is Shield Lore. This passive ability raises its user's proficiency with shields to S rank, increasing their effectiveness, which is quite helpful for jobs that want to wear a shield but might not be getting the desired effect from them. The Bastion focuses on building up BP through defaulting and taking hits, and then following up with spending their new BP on actions to throw as many defensive buffs on themselves and the party as possible. But sometimes they may not have much use of their BP in certain situations. So let's take a look at some sub-jobs that give the Bastion something else to do. First up is my personal favorite Bastion sub-job option, that being the White Mage. Not only does Bastion have a high restorative power, making their heals quite potent, but this combo lets them play both the role of damage prevention and restoration, managing 2 roles at once for the party. This combo essentially creates a nigh unkillable support healer that will always have something to provide to the team, be it buffs, survivability, or heals. Shieldmaster is a good alternative if you want to lean more into the tanking aspect of the Bastion, as they have the most direct means of taking hits for the party, even if it doesn't always activate their specialties. The Dragoon leans further into the offense aspect of the Bastion, while also providing Spirit Surge, which can restore both HP and MP, which the Bastion does expend quite frequently to keep themselves alive and to gain BP. And lastly is the Swordmaster, as you can adopt Fluid Stance to make your BP gain even more frequent, while also removing BP from your enemies. This combo turns your Bastion into essentially a reverse BP battery, removing the enemy's BP while constantly supplying their own to keep kicking the enemy down. The Bastion has a very interesting gimmick and playstyle, putting a lot of focus on gaining lots of BP to spend on powerful yet expensive buffs that benefit the Bastion or their whole team. The job also sports some of the most unique playstyle options, as its high BP economy allows it to make use of various actions that many other jobs might not otherwise. Bastion also can hit fairly hard, heal very well, and can take hits like a champ, with its main weakness being its cumbersome speed in my personal opinion. Abilities like Sanctuary have some very niche but fun uses, and Rampart and Velation are incredibly valuable skills. Overall, the Bastion is a fun and creative job that has some unique abilities that you can't really find anywhere else, so make use of it and have some fun. Now we moved on to the fashion tier list. And I've got to admit that this will be probably the most bipolar placements we have seen on this list. Well, not probably, this will be the most bipolar placement. Starting with the girls first, I absolutely adore the whole battle dress look they've got going. The plate armor being covered by this awesome robe and cape is so freaking cool, and the color combos are also spot on. Easily one of my favorite looks for both Gloria and Adele, and would probably be in the S tier category if it weren't for some clipping issues in-game, which isn't normally a problem that I give much attention to, but it is very apparent on this job, especially on Gloria, for me not to give a mention to it. Now, Seth and Elvis easily got the worst of the package here, and I'll go ahead and say it now. The male design for the Bastion is, without a doubt, my least favorite design in Bravely Default 2. It feels way too busy and just looks like they superglued a bunch of random metal pieces together and strapped on a cape. I do like the purple colors on Seth, but that's really about it.